What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I am, of course, Andrew Barchak from COASTER-net here with a brand new wrestling show. Now, we've done a whole bunch in the past, Swerve, Shoots, and Payoffs, Ride Warrior Wrestling, but this one is called What a Mark, and it is inspired by an old Raven skit from WCW Nitro, and it's all me, all alone. So you're getting my unfiltered thoughts here on the wrestling industry. And for the first episode, I want to talk about something that is coming up in the next week here, and that is the relaunch of NXT. Now, a lot of people are out there decrying this, saying that this is going to be terrible, that NXT is dead officially, pointing to Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard having more of an influence, possibly Triple H having less of an influence. That seems to be all rumor and conjecture. We know Vince and Bruce are going to be involved a little bit more than maybe what they have been. But what I want to talk to you today is, if I was to book NXT, how would I book it? And this Vince and Bruce being more a part of NXT is going to solve, hopefully, if I was booking it, one of the big problems that NXT has always had, and that is having to get over twice. And if you look at NXT, they keep talking about, oh, we want to take it back to the glory days of 2015, of 2014, when you're looking at, you know, Kevin Owens and Finn Balor and Shinsuke. They had this group of young stars ready to come up, ready to make a name for themselves, putting on great matches, great storylines within NXT, great production values. So that's been like, hey, we want to take it back to then. They're not talking about taking it back to the old FCW days with Roman and Seth and even before people were really watching, on the WWE network. I think it was with the introduction of the WWE network that NXT got exposed to a whole lot more people. That before that, you could find them on the internet. You could find, shows on YouTube when Seth was champ or when Neville was champ. You could find these shows, but I, for one, didn't watch it until the network launched with the big launch and having those takeovers, especially those first few takeovers with Paige and Charlotte and Natalya. Those were some great shows. So they're not talking about taking it all the way back there. They're talking about taking it back to a place where it was really, really popular. And that's why I kind of question this whole edict with, there's no more indie guys. I don't think there's no more indie guys, but there won't be certain types of indie guys where the recent years, I feel like they've just been, and this is a fact, they've just been signing everyone and their uncle. That if you had a name on the indie circuit, there was a competition out there to get as many guys into the system as possible, as many girls into the system as possible. And I just think that it's led to signing people who they may not have traditionally have signed, and it might not be working out as well, I think, in the eyes of the higher ups in the company. So let's get back to my main point of how to fix NXT, because I do think it's been lagging. That there's been a lot of great stuff. Johnny Gargano's work since his debut has been amazing on NXT. The last year with The Way and Indy and Candice has been outstanding. He is one of, by far, the highlights of NXT each and every week. So looking at obviously they don't need to fix a whole lot. They need to fix some inherent problems. I think the biggest problem is the fact that anyone who is successful in NXT then has to jump to Raw or SmackDown and basically has to get over twice. That this has been the issue from the very start of NXT, is this issue of having to get over twice. And should NXT be developmental? Should it be a third brand? Should it be talked about? For instance, when Piper Niven goes to Raw, everyone pretends like they've never heard of her before. When Retribution debuts, instead of playing into some of those storylines, they act as if they've never seen, Dominic Dijakovic, who's now T-Bar, or Mace, who was, just on commentary on Raw a few weeks ago. This idea that we need to ignore what happens in NXT and then bring them over, essentially forcing every single wrestler to have to get over twice with the crowd. And getting over once and capturing lightning in a bottle sometimes is hard enough to do it one time. But then to be being asked to be able to do it twice in NXT and then whatever brand you go to, whether it be Raw or SmackDown, I think that's one of the essential problems is you're wasting too many people and too much hot momentum on NXT while not gaining those people on your main shows and not carrying over that momentum to the main shows. And we've seen a number of people kind of flounder, and there's various reasons of why they flounder on Raw or SmackDown. You see Shinsuke had a really hot start and then has kind of like just meandered through for the last couple of years, won the Rumble, but didn't win the title at WrestleMania. We do know that Vince likes to do this with top guys, though, likes to mess around with them a little bit and give them a big push, then really de-push them and then see how they handle it and then maybe push them again. And it's that maybe pushing them again is maybe getting over twice. Maybe I'm phrasing this wrong because Vince has always made people get over twice. Now it seems like he's making them get over 3 times, where you have to get over in NXT, you get over again on the Raw or SmackDown, you get the D push, and then you got to get over a 3rd time. This is turning into lunacy here. Whether you call it getting over twice or 3 times, this is pure lunacy. And I don't think you should just push anyone immediately because you have people that can't handle it. I get that. I totally understand the thinking of making sure a superstar is able to handle the pressure and not just hot-shotting titles around. Okay, I understand that to some point. Sometimes I think they use that philosophy way too much and they don't push a person, that they should. Ryback comes to mind, but Ryback maybe is the perfect example of why you shouldn't push a guy to the moon, put the strap on him and make him a superstar, where he just has crumbled on social media the last few years. Maybe rightfully so, maybe not. I don't know. So in any case, I'm hoping that if you rebrand NXT and you can kind of maybe promote it more. And we kind of saw this over the last few months too, where ever since they moved to Tuesday nights, we've heard this new edict that they're going to promote stuff on Raw more. We've seen Karrion Kross, whatever opinions you have. I don't mind Karrion Kross's new outfit. Just the helmet is absolutely ridiculous. But the gimmick change and the costume change, I think is okay, but I think the helmet could use a lot of work. And a side note, but we see him with the NXT title on Raw, which I think is bringing more exposure to NXT. And I think that's what has to happen here. And the best parallels that I could use in recent times, I think, is new ECW. And you can talk about them reusing the ECW name or whether new ECW was actually old. That doesn't matter. What did happen in new ECW is, I think, what needs to happen in NXT now. That what we need to see happen is this is actually a 3rd brand. That yes, you can have developmental and have people come up and work on their craft, but do it in a more publicized way. So if you look back on new ECW back in the early 2000s or late 2000s, I guess, and you see the guys who came up there: Kofi Kingston, The Miz, Morrison, CM Punk came through the system. There were a lot of misses as well. Okay, so don't get me wrong. There were quite a few misses out of new ECW that did not pan out. But you have some legitimate superstars coming through that system, and they were given a forum to be able to participate on television. That it wasn't like they were just on the undercard of Raw or the undercard of SmackDown or having to fight for the Intercontinental title or the World title. That they had their own title. They had the ECW Championship. They were on pay-per-views. And I think having everything be separate and NXT have this like separate universe, like you look at like the shared universe of the MCU, and Raw and SmackDown were shared, but then NXT was kind of off on its own, except for a few times, like when we had Survivor Series in Chicago 2 years ago, when they brought in NXT or when they wanted to bring in NXT. I think having NXT be more part of the overall landscape of the WWE universe is going to help these guys out a lot. That they get to make mistakes, if you will. They get that exposure in a controlled environment. But I think we need to be seeing them on WWE branded pay-per-views. Like the takeovers are awesome. I love them. But I think if we want to fix the NXT system, maybe having them be more involved and having the NXT title defended on WWE pay-per-views more often. Why is the NXT title not being defended at WrestleMania? It's a big enough title. I know you have the takeover, but I feel like the NXT title should be defended on the main show on WrestleMania. That's where that match needs to be, to get those guys exposure, to get those girls exposure, so that they can be seen more. And then you don't have this issue of when you bring someone to the main roster, or to Raw or SmackDown, of having the need to having them to have to get over twice again or 3 times. I think that's been the biggest issue. And when we see people complain, they missed on this guy, or they missed on that girl, or this person never got a shot on the main roster, I think having it all be the main roster and getting rid of this developmental in its own little universe concept is probably the best thing that could happen to NXT. So you could build new stars, but then also sending, and they kind of did this a little bit too with, like Sin Cara and Kalisto, where they sent Sin Cara back to NXT. We see Mandy Rose going back to NXT. Maybe people that don't have a clear direction on Raw or SmackDown can then be sent to NXT and be used there in different storylines. I think that has been an amazing thing. People loved it when Zack Ryder went back to NXT and tagged with Mojo Rawley for a little bit. Maybe he didn't like it. Maybe the stars didn't like it. I think the best example is just recently Finn Balor going back to NXT, having an amazing run in NXT, doing some good stuff there, and now coming back to the main roster and right back in the mix with Roman Reigns all of a sudden. So I think refreshing people's career should be another hallmark of NXT as well. That I want to see the new guys come up, the new women's wrestlers come up. I want to see people who need a refresh go back down there and maybe get another shot before being future endeavored. But I think at the end of the day, I think NXT needs to change. That people are like, oh, NXT is dead, but it's not helping anybody the way it's been working. Okay, that it's gotten a few people over. That there have been success stories out of NXT, no question about it. You look at names like Kevin Owens is one of the biggest ones. Some of the women's wrestlers, people have come out of NXT and been very, 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 very successful on the main roster. There have been a number of people who haven't been. And I think by changing the perception of this is developmental to everyone watching Raw and SmackDown need to watch NXT too. If you set that precedent right now, you've been allowed as a fan to pick and choose if you want to watch NXT. That it's not on the main roster pay-per-views. That you're if you watch only SmackDown, you're missing out on stuff on Raw when you watch the pay-per-views. If you're not watching NXT, there's no effect when you watch WrestleMania or Royal Rumble, besides maybe not knowing a person here or there that enters the Rumble once every blue moon. So I think making it a legitimate third brand, and still keeping NXT what makes it, the small arenas, the controlled environment, maybe doing takeovers every now and then in between pay-per-views, but having your main titles still be defended on major pay-per-views that are triple branded. I think that's the way to go here. And I'm hoping ultimately it leads to us seeing better superstars come out of NXT and being hotter when they get to the main roster, and not losing that momentum where we're having to re-debut or change your character completely. I think you can still see a little bit of that where people jump from Raw to SmackDown, sometimes change their character a little bit, or just within the show itself, they change their character. You look at Alexa Bliss, who has changed her character numerous times and refreshed herself. That's always been a hallmark of wrestling, being able to reinvent yourself. So I don't think that's the issue. I think being asked to do it as a brand new superstar and then being asked to do it 2 or 3 years later, once you jump to, the bigger shows, I think that's where the issue is being able to do that on your own terms versus being forced to do it when you get called up to the main roster. And you can still do NXT developmental stuff down on your house show circuit in Florida. Have those people, and who's ready, bring them to that, and still being in that sheltered environment there. So overall, I'm excited about where NXT could go. I'm excited about maybe trying to fix the problem that I've been talking about here, having to get over 2 or 3 times in your career, being forced to now. And I'm hoping, I'm going to be optimistic here. I'm hoping that NXT doesn't die, in quotation marks, and just become another show. Hopefully we still have that feeling of what makes NXT special, but being able to allow these wrestlers more screen time, more exposure, and more opportunities to become big superstars, because that's what we need. We need big superstars on all 3 brands. You can't just have them in NXT and have a segment of the pop. You need them watching your WrestleManias and buying your WWE Network and buying your merchandise for this to stay successful. So hopefully you've enjoyed my little rant here on the first episode of What a Mark. Of course, I am Andy Rabarchak from Chicago, Illinois. Right on, Ride Warriors.